Good morning, this is your Stat Sensei, Mr. Spensei, and this is an assignment on calculating residuals, linear regression, and doing scatter plots and residual plots. So the scenario is baby weight. A study of nutrition in developing countries collected the following data on the weights of babies in kilograms during the first months of their lives. And we have it all listed here. Here's our list in months, and here's our weight in kilograms. So I need to enter this in a calculator, but first thing I want to do is I want to press mode, scroll down and make sure my stat diagnostics are turned on. If not, press enter, make sure stat wizard's turned on. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and quit. Go to stat edit and enter my months in L1 and the weight in kilograms in L2. So I have all that data entered in L1 and L2, and I'm going to go ahead and run my test. So stat test F, which is linear regression t-test. This needs to be not equal. And right here, it seems a little bit weird. You're going to press the alpha button, which is the green button, followed by trace. Press enter. And there we go. Now, this is always weird because it has y equals a plus bx. Remember, a happens to be the y-intercept, and b, and I know this is different than algebra, b is next to is our slope. And the way to remember it is your slope is always next to the x. So b is my slope. All right, so the very first thing it asks for is what is our y-intercept? So it's asking for a. Now, a lot of times in stats, we get really fancy and we say, okay, y hat equals beta naught plus beta x. All right. Well, beta naught happens to be, which is our y-intercept. When we look for our y-intercept, we're looking for a on the calculator. Oh, a is 4.8803. Then it asks for our slope, which is 0.2671. And please pay attention that once again, on the calculator, a is the y-intercept and b is the slope. The next thing it asks for is our coefficient of determination, which is our r squared. And we're going to scroll down, and there it is, 0.8218. The last thing it asks for is our correlation coefficient, which is 0.9065. I want to tell you, watch what happens when I take the square root of 0.8218. So blue square root 0.8218. All right, there's how I got that 0.9065. The next thing it asks for is the standard deviation of the residuals. And if I go back to stat test and run the test again, letter F, alpha trace, S is 0.4703. All right. So we don't have to do all the fancy calculations. We can pull that off of a regression analysis, but 0.4703 is what we're looking for. And we can pull that straight off the calculator. So that's our standard deviation of the residuals. The next thing it asks for is a regression equation. Well, we write it as y hat equals a plus bx. So a plus bx, and that's what we're going to have. Y hat equals 4.8803 plus our slope. So this is right here is our y-intercept. And then right here we have our slope. One thing to be careful of, make sure you have a y hat. Make sure you have a hat on that y. Okay, the next thing it asks for is for us to predict, all right, the weight for 2 months. Well, here's how I do that. I take that equation and I just plug in the number 2 because that's the age in months. So when I do that, I'm just going to go, okay, second quit, 4.8803 plus 0.2671 parenthesis 2 and close it. And I end up getting 5.41 4 or 5 kilograms. So that's what I would expect a 2-month-old baby to weigh. Now they said this one weighed 5.1. The next thing, the prediction. All right, because that's what we use regression for, is to make predictions. We're going to take the same equation that we have, and we have 4.8803 plus 0.2671. And this time we want to know what it is at 6 months. So I'm going to put the 6 in parentheses, and I expect it to weigh about 6.4289 kilograms. The one we actually observed weighed more than that at 7.1. Okay, the next thing it asks us for is to calculate the residuals for the 12 months. All right, so we're going to go back to stat edit. We have all this information entered in L1 and L2, but we're going to have to go up to the top of L3, and I'm going to press blue 3, and excuse me, I said that wrong. We'll go up to the top of L3 and press the blue button, followed by the stat button. I'm going to drop down to resid, and we should populate all 12 of our residuals. All right. And so that's what we ended up getting, and we just copy them down. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time hovering over that, but those are our residuals. And if I added up all those residuals, they actually sum to 0. All right. So the summation of all the residuals is 0. The next thing it's going to ask us to do is sketch a scatter plot. To do that, I'm going to press the blue button, followed by stat plot, press enter, make sure it's on. I want the first graph, and my X list is an L1, and my Y list is an L2, so I need to change that to blue 2. Once I have that, I can press zoom, followed by the number 9. Now, I like to draw with the line just because it helps me establish where my points are. And you don't have to be perfect, but this is probably a pretty good approximation. And I'm going to go ahead and add this line there just so we can see it a little better. All right. So it looks something like that. Okay. Kind of goes up this way and then like that. All right. So there's our scatter plot, and we need the points. You don't have to draw the line. I just feel like drawing the line helps me do that. All residual plots are centered on 0. All right. And so that's the next thing it asked me to do, is to draw the residual plot. Well, how do I do that? So I'm going to go back to stat plot, blue stat plot, and press enter. And I'm going to keep everything the same except my Y list. I'm going to change to L3. And here's why I'm changing to L3. If I went to stat edit, we calculated our residuals earlier. And if you didn't do that, I'll show you how to do it one more time. Go to the top of L3, press the blue button, followed by stat, scroll down to resid, and press enter, and there they are. So now blue stat plot, enter. I need to change my Y list to L3 because that's where my residuals are. So blue 3. And I'll press zoom 9. And there is my residual plot. When I look at the residual plot, I'm definitely seeing kind of a pattern to it. It looks like it's going up, curving down, and going like this. So I'm seeing a definite pattern. So based on the residual plot, is line an appropriate prediction? And the answer is no, a line is not appropriate because there's a pattern on the residual plot. If a line was appropriate, this would be completely random. So since it's not random, since it's not random, a linear model is not the most appropriate. All right, which is kind of surprising because we have a high correlation, but just because it's highly correlated doesn't mean it's the best model. So some other model will be a better model because the residual plot is not random and has a pattern. All right, appreciate you watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.